Hello and welcome back to An Old Man Watches, and today I'm going to be talking about Hallmark Entertainment's 2002 miniseries Snow Queen, which is loosely based on the Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale of the same name. Gerda is our main character. She's a young woman whose mother died 9 years previously, freezing to death in the woods. And Gerda has grown up hating the winter as a consequence. She's not been able to emotionally move on from her mother's death for those 9 years, but that changes with the arrival of a new bellboy at her father's hotel. The handsome Kai immediately befriends Gerda and coaxes her to resume her childhood hobby of ice skating. Love soon blossoms between them. Unfortunately, Gerda is right to hate and fear the winter, as personified by the malevolent Snow Queen. This cruel, cold-hearted supernatural monarch plans to use her devil's mirror to destroy all the other seasons and rule the earth alone. Fortunately for everybody, the mirror is currently broken, preventing her from doing so. Now, the Snow Queen, however, seems to have a particular hatred for the women of Gerda's family. She was the likely culprit behind the death of Gerda's mother, and she now kidnaps Kai away from Gerda, imprisoning him until he agrees to repair the Devil's Mirror for her. But the Snow Queen has underestimated Gerda. The young woman sets out on a journey across the magical realms of the Four Seasons, intending to win back her love and thwart the wintry monarch's wicked schemes in the process. I bought this movie on DVD as an impulse purchase. I was standing in a supermarket checkout line and it was on a shelf and very cheap. I knew nothing about it except that it starred Bridget Fonda, and it was based on a fairy tale that I'd liked as a child. I mean, frankly, I've had worse reasons for buying DVDs than that. Fonda plays the Snow Queen herself, and the role was actually her last screen credit. She seems to have chosen to retire from Hollywood and focus on her family shortly after this came out. And it may seem something of an unusual final entry in the career of a woman best known for 90s action and thriller films, but after all, playing different roles is what actors do. Also, it's not really germane to the topic of this video, which of course is to answer the question, is it any good? And well, Snow Queen is a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest. Let's talk about it in more detail. So the greatest strength of Snow Queen is the main character, Gerda. She's a proactive young woman who actively pursues her goals and who is generally motivated by a desire to do the right thing and help others. That makes her very much a minority in this film, as most of the people she encounters in her journey tend to be much more in the keep your head down and avoid trouble kind of mentality, or are even actively selfish, self-centered and counterproductive. Now, Gerda certainly has some negative emotional impulses. She hates and fears winter for what it has done to her family, after all. But overall, her motivations and her goals are positive ones. She seeks to protect or save those she cares about and to prevent bad things from happening, just in general. She tries to do so by cooperating with others and helping them rather than trying to trick them or otherwise use them to her advantage. And it's pleasing to see a positive, proactive lead who actively pursues their goals in a conscientious and compassionate way, without becoming overly twee and saccharine in the process. This is a case of good execution by both the script and the actor in the role. Unfortunately, not all aspects of the plot are as deftly judged. There are some decidedly unwise plot decisions, characters, and scenes dotted throughout this show. In some cases, these elements are unwise because they didn't really fit the overall tone of the program. This was made for the Hallmark Channel, so it's firmly in family-friendly territory. There's some mentions of scary stuff, but there's no real depiction of it, except for one rather jarring scene where Satan himself pops up to manipulate the Snow Queen into beginning her wicked scheme. It feels quite odd and out of place. In other cases, the elements are simply unwise in and of themselves. For instance, the program introduces a Chinese magician who speaks a kind of pidgin English. The script plays this rather gross racial caricature for laughs, but it's simply just cringeworthy, even if it does turn out that this character is one of the few unequivocally good and helpful people that Gerda meets. Similarly, I think the script's method of having Gerda commence her magical journey is a bad one. Following Kai's disappearance, she throws herself into a river. I would submit that throwing yourself into a river is not generally a good response to personal crisis, unless perhaps you're in danger of catching fire, and it certainly won't result in you going on a magical journey to rescue your one true love. So, a little bit odd narratively. Now, if Wikipedia was to be believed, the budget for this miniseries is about $1.25 million, or about as much as was spent to make each minute of Fast and the Furious 9. It's also a 20-year-old TV miniseries, so it's perhaps not really a surprise that the special effects quality is somewhat ropey at times. And personally, I can forgive this, especially since some of the costumes are pretty cool, and of course the film does find time to squeeze in a polar bear on ice skates. I can forgive a lot for a polar bear on ice skates. One thing I can't forgive, though, is the utter insipidness of the Snow Queen soundtrack. This soundtrack includes only one credited work, a little ditty called The Two of Us Will Always Be One. Running about 90 seconds or so in total length, this derivative and pedestrian romantic ballad is warbled repeatedly throughout Snow Queen's near 3-hour runtime, outstaying its welcome to the point where I stopped being merely tired of it and began to get the giggles every time its strained melody began again. At the end of the day, Snow Queen isn't bad, but overall, if you want to watch something inspired by this particular fairy tale, Frozen is right there. It's a superior production on every front, but especially when it comes to the soundtrack. Next time, Pixar's 2007 animated concoction, Ratatouille. But that's next time. Until then, thanks for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it.